Amy's accusation hung in the air, heavy and absurd. My first instinct was to defend Sarah, but the look in Amy's eyes gave me pause. She wasn't just throwing out an offhand comment. She genuinely believed what she was saying. Amy, what are you talking about? I asked, keeping my tone as neutral as I could. Sarah has been taking care of Mom around the clock. You've seen how much she's done for her. Amy crossed her arms, her expression a mix of determination and frustration. Exactly, Jason. She's been in total control of Mom's care. Her meals, her medications, everything. Don't you think it's suspicious that Mom's getting worse now, after months of improvements? I stared at her, dumbfounded. Mom's condition is unpredictable. You know that. Her doctor said it's common for autoimmune diseases to flare up. Amy wasn't convinced. I'm a nurse. I've seen cases like this. I know what I'm talking about. The timing of Amy's accusations couldn't have been worse. Mom's sudden decline had already turned our household upside down. Sarah spent hours researching new recipes and consulting with Mom's doctors, trying to pinpoint what might be causing the flare-ups. She looked exhausted but never complained, even when Mom's condition meant sleepless nights and constant vigilance. Amy, on the other hand, had been visiting more frequently, often dropping by unannounced. At first, I thought she was just being a concerned daughter, but her behavior quickly became intrusive. She hovered over Sarah in the kitchen, scrutinizing every ingredient. She peppered Sarah with questions about Mom's diet, her supplements, and even her cooking methods. Sarah tried to stay patient, but Amy's tone grew sharper with each visit. She started making passive-aggressive comments, questioning Sarah's qualifications. Being a nutritionist isn't the same as being a real medical professional, she said one evening, her voice dripping with disdain. Sarah bit her tongue, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. The breaking point came during a hospital visit. Mom had suffered a particularly bad episode and was admitted for observation. While we waited in the hospital lounge, Amy confronted Sarah in front of everyone. You've been feeding Mom things you know she can't have, haven't you? Amy accused, her voice rising. Sarah looked shocked. What are you talking about? I've been following her doctor's guidelines exactly. Don't play innocent, Amy snapped. I've been watching you. You're either careless or worse. You're doing this on purpose. I stepped in, my anger finally bubbling over. Amy, that's enough. Sarah has done nothing but take care of Mom. How can you even say something like that? Amy turned her glare on me. You're blind, Jason. She's manipulating you. You think she wants to take care of Mom forever? She's probably trying to push her into a nursing home, so she doesn't have to deal with it anymore. The room went silent. Mom, lying in the hospital bed, looked stricken. Sarah was in tears. I clenched my fists, trying to control my temper. You're out of line, Amy. If you have actual evidence, show it. Otherwise, stop making baseless accusations. Amy straightened, her face hard. Fine, I will. With that, she stormed out of the room, leaving behind an air of tension so thick it was hard to breathe. I turned to Sarah, who was shaking her head in disbelief. I don't understand why she hates me so much, she whispered. I didn't understand it either. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Amy was determined to prove her point, no matter the cost. And I had a sinking feeling that things were about to get much, much worse. Amy's suspicion went from annoying to downright invasive almost overnight. It felt like she was using Mom's illness as a pretext to micromanage our lives, but her real target was Sarah. She wasn't just questioning Sarah's methods anymore. She was actively hunting for evidence to prove her outlandish theory. One evening, I caught Amy in the pantry meticulously photographing the labels on spice jars and canned goods. What are you doing? I demanded. She didn't even flinch. Just making sure there's nothing in here that could trigger Mom's symptoms. I shook my head, exasperated. Sarah's been doing that from day one. You know that. Amy snapped back, well, someone isn't doing their job because Mom isn't getting better. Sarah overheard and came into the room, visibly trying to stay calm. Amy, I've been tracking everything Mom eats and following the doctor's advice. If you think I'm missing something, why don't we go over the food diary together? Amy scoffed, crossing her arms. A diary you wrote yourself? Forgive me if I don't trust it. The tension in our house was unbearable. Sarah was doing everything possible to care for Mom, yet Amy acted like she was running some kind of sinister operation. She'd make snide comments every chance she got, chipping away at Sarah's confidence. You're just playing house with Mom's health, Amy said during one particularly tense dinner. This isn't a hobby, Sarah. It's life or death. Sarah clenched her fork but said nothing, and I could see the tears welling in her eyes. Enough, Amy, I snapped. If you're going to be here, you need to respect what Sarah's doing. She's been working tirelessly for Mom. Amy shot me a cold look. You're too blinded by love to see what's right in front of you, Jason. Later that night, I found Sarah sitting on the edge of the bed, holding her head in her hands. I don't know how much more of this I can take, she said quietly. I'm trying my best, but nothing I do is good enough for her. I wrapped my arms around her, furious at Amy for putting her through this. You've done everything right, Sarah. Don't let her make you doubt yourself. Then came the hospital incident. Mom had another severe episode, worse than anything we'd seen in months. Sarah called 911 immediately, and we spent hours in the hospital waiting for test results. Sarah sat quietly beside me, wringing her hands, while Amy paced the room like a caged animal. Finally, she stopped in front of us and pointed an accusatory finger at Sarah. You're poisoning her, aren't you? She hissed, loud enough for nearby patients to glance our way. Sarah's jaw dropped. What? Are you serious? Amy nodded, her eyes wild. It's the only explanation. You're trying to get rid of her because you can't handle the responsibility. Admit it. I shot out of my chair, my voice echoing in the waiting room. Amy, stop this nonsense right now. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? She retorted. I've been watching her. I've seen the patterns, Jason. I know what's going on. Sarah was in tears by then, and Mom, who had been wheeled into the room after a checkup, looked confused and hurt. Amy, stop, she said weakly. Sarah's been nothing but kind to me. Amy ignored her and stormed out of the waiting room, muttering something about getting proof. That was the moment I realized Amy wasn't going to stop until she tore our family apart. Amy's revelation about secretly testing Mom's food had left me fuming. The idea that she'd go behind our backs to support such an outrageous accusation against Sarah was bad enough, but her refusal to provide any concrete evidence made it worse. Unofficial testing? I had snapped. That's not proof, Amy. That's paranoia. Sarah spent the night curled up on the couch, crying silently. What did I ever do to her? She asked, her voice breaking. Why does she hate me so much? I didn't have an answer. Amy's behavior had always been a little overbearing, but this was something else entirely. The next morning, I noticed something odd while putting away laundry. A small black device, no bigger than a matchbox, was tucked between books on a shelf in the living room. I picked it up, my pulse quickening as I realized what it was, a camera. Panic set in as I searched the house. Within minutes, I found 2 more cameras, one mounted discreetly in a corner of the kitchen, and another hidden in the frame of a decorative mirror. Each one was aimed at areas where Sarah spent the most time, preparing Mom's meals, tidying up, or sitting with her on the couch. My hands trembled as I called Sarah into the room. You're not going to believe this, I said, showing her the cameras. Her face went pale. Who would do this? She stammered. But we both knew the answer. I called Amy immediately, my voice shaking with rage. What the hell is wrong with you? I shouted the moment she answered. What are you talking about? She replied, feigning ignorance. Don't play dumb, I snapped. I found your cameras. You planted surveillance devices in my house. There was a long pause, and then she sighed. I had to, she said, her tone defiant. You're too blind to see what's happening under your own roof. I needed to protect Mom. The audacity of her words made my blood boil. Protect her from what? I demanded. From Sarah? The woman who's been taking care of her every single day? Are you even listening to yourself? Amy didn't back down. I knew you wouldn't believe me, Jason. That's why I needed evidence. I was going to prove Sarah was poisoning Mom, and then you'd thank me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're spying on us, violating our privacy, and you think I'm going to thank you for it? Sarah, who was standing nearby, looked like she was about to collapse. I can't do this anymore, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I turned back to the phone, furious. You're not welcome here anymore, Amy. Don't come near our house, and don't contact us until you get help. She hung up on me, but the damage was done. That night, Sarah and I removed the cameras and brought them to a lawyer. He confirmed that what Amy had done was not only unethical, but illegal in our state. You have grounds for legal action, he said. Mom was heartbroken when I told her. Why would Amy do this? She asked, her voice frail. I wish I knew, I replied, guilt gnawing at me for not seeing the warning signs earlier. The discovery of the cameras changed everything. It wasn't just about Amy's baseless accusations anymore. It was about trust, privacy, and the lengths she was willing to go to undermine Sarah. As furious as I was, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to Amy's hatred than I understood. I resolved to find out what it was, no matter what it took. Amy's refusal to back down after the discovery of the hidden cameras only deepened the wedge between us. At the family meeting I called to address her actions, I laid everything out on the table. The cameras, her accusations, and her supposed evidence. I want to see these test results, I demanded, my voice echoing through the living room. If you're so convinced Sarah is hurting Mom, then prove it. Amy's confidence wavered. I told you I can't, she stammered. The tests were done off the record. I didn't want to risk getting in trouble at work. The room fell silent, the tension thick. My mother, frail and visibly upset, turned to Amy. You've caused so much hurt, she said softly. If you don't have proof, why are you doing this? Amy avoided everyone's gaze. I'm just trying to protect you, Mom, she muttered. A few days later, I bumped into Monica, one of Amy's co-workers at the grocery store. Monica had been a family friend for years, someone I trusted. After some small talk, I decided to bring up the issue delicately. Monica, can I ask you something? Amy mentioned she had some of Mom's food tested at your lab. Is that even allowed? Monica's brows knitted in confusion. That's impossible, she said bluntly. Our lab doesn't allow personal samples. It's against policy. And Amy wouldn't even have access to that department. She works in cardiac care, not pathology. Her words left me stunned. Amy hadn't just exaggerated. She'd lied. Armed with Monica's revelation, I confronted Amy at her apartment. She opened the door reluctantly, her expression wary. What do you want, Jason? She asked. Answers, I replied, stepping inside. I talked to Monica. She says you couldn't have tested Mom's food. So, what's the truth, Amy? Were there ever any tests? Her face turned red, and for a moment, I thought she'd deny it again. But then she crumbled. No, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I made it up. I stared at her, trying to process her confession. Why? I asked, my anger bubbling beneath the surface. Why go to such lengths to attack Sarah? Tears streamed down her face as she collapsed onto the couch. I don't trust her, she sobbed. She's not who you think she is, Jason. She's manipulating you. And I was trying to protect you and Mom. Her words didn't feel like a genuine concern. It felt personal. Protect me from what? I demanded. Sarah's done nothing but take care of Mom and support me through all of this. If you have a real reason to hate her, tell me. Otherwise, this needs to stop. Amy looked up at me, her expression a mix of guilt and frustration. You wouldn't understand, she said cryptically. But I swear, there's more to her than you know. Her evasive response left me more determined than ever to uncover the real reason behind her hatred for Sarah. Amy wasn't just lashing out. There was something deeper, something she wasn't telling me, and I intended to find out. The tension in the room was palpable as family members filtered into my living room. My aunts, uncles, cousins, and even my dad's brother, Uncle Ed, had come. Everyone knew about the cameras, Amy's accusations, and Sarah's anguish. It was time for the truth, or whatever semblance of it Amy was willing to offer. Amy showed up last, her arms crossed and her face hard. She didn't greet anyone, heading straight for a chair in the corner. Sarah sat quietly by my side, her hands trembling as she clasped mine. All right, I began, standing to address everyone. We're here because this has gone too far. Amy's made serious accusations against Sarah, and I think it's only fair she explains herself. So, Amy, I said, turning to her, tell us what you've been doing, and why. Amy rolled her eyes. I've already told you. I was trying to protect Mom. If none of you can see what's really going on, then... That's not the whole story, Amy, interrupted Jenny, my cousin, who had been quiet until now. She stood with her phone in hand, glaring at Amy. Why don't you tell everyone about the Protecting Mom group chat? Protecting Mom? I asked, confused. Jenny glanced at me apologetically before turning to the rest of the room. Amy made a private group chat with a few of us, claiming Sarah was hurting Aunt Linda. She's been posting exaggerated stories, pictures from the cameras, and twisting everything to fit her narrative. Gasps filled the room, and all eyes were on Amy. She turned beet red, but still refused to back down. I was trying to show you the truth, she snapped. None of you wanted to believe me, so I had to prove it another way. I took a deep breath, trying to control my anger. Jenny, I said, what exactly has she been saying in this group chat? Jenny hesitated, but opened the app on her phone. Things like Sarah forgetting to buy gluten-free bread and saying it's part of a pattern of neglect. Or how she took videos of Sarah cooking and claimed she was being careless with cross-contamination. She scrolled further. There's a picture of Sarah giving Mom her medication, and Amy called it suspicious. She even accused her of using the wrong dosage. Are you serious, Amy? I asked, incredulous. You've been twisting every little thing Sarah does to make her look guilty. Amy stood, her fists clenched. Because she is guilty. She's fooling all of you, and I'm the only one who can see it. I had to do something, but her self-righteousness didn't hold up. Uncle Ed, a retired police officer, spoke up. Amy, you've planted illegal cameras, lied about lab tests, and now you're manipulating everyone with this nonsense. If you had any real evidence, you wouldn't need to fabricate it. Another cousin chimed in. Yeah, Amy, if you were so worried about Aunt Linda, why didn't you just come to us honestly instead of sneaking around? Amy glared at everyone, clearly cornered. You don't understand. She's dangerous. I shook my head. No, Amy. The only dangerous one here is you. You've turned our family against each other, spread lies, and put Sarah through hell. For what? If you can't give us a real reason right now, then this ends here. Amy opened her mouth as if to speak, but hesitated. She looked around the room, her expression flickering between anger and something else. Guilt, maybe? Forget it, she muttered and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The room fell silent. I looked around at my stunned family. Well, I said finally, I think we know who's really been hurting this family. But even as I tried to move on, something didn't sit right. Amy's behavior wasn't just obsessive. It felt personal, like there was something deeper driving her hatred. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't telling us the whole story. The day started innocently enough. Mom was feeling stronger, so we decided to go through some old family photo albums to lift her spirits. It was comforting at first, pictures of holidays, family vacations, and birthday parties. But then, tucked between the pages of an album from 15 years ago, I found an envelope. Curious, I slid it open and found a stack of engagement party invitations. The name on them stopped me cold. Amy and James. I showed the invitations to Mom, who sighed heavily, her expression clouded with regret. I was wondering when you'd come across those, she said. Amy and James were engaged for 3 years. She was head over heels for him. But, she paused, looking hesitant to continue. But what? I pressed. He left her just 2 months before the wedding, Mom admitted. He ran off with another woman. Amy was devastated. She moved away for a while and asked us never to bring it up again. I didn't realize those were still here. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. James wasn't just any ex-fiancé. He was Sarah's cousin. Later that evening, I sat down with Sarah and told her everything. Her eyes widened as I explained. I barely know James, she said, shaking her head. He's kind of the black sheep of the family. My parents only talk about him when they have to, and I don't think I've seen him in years. I had no idea he was engaged to Amy. The pieces started falling into place. Amy's obsessive vendetta against Sarah wasn't about Mom's care. It was personal. Her accusations, the cameras, the defamation. It was all fueled by old wounds and unresolved anger. But there was more to uncover. I started looking into James's recent whereabouts, and what I found made everything even clearer. James had recently moved back to the city and was working as a wellness entrepreneur. Even more shocking, he was planning a professional collaboration with Sarah on a nutrition program for his company. I shared this new information with Sarah, who was now visibly shaken. So that's what this is about, she said, her voice trembling. She's still holding a grudge over something that happened years ago, and now she's dragging us all into it. The timing was impossible to ignore. Amy's accusations against Sarah had escalated right around the time she would have learned about the collaboration. I could picture it now. Amy seeing Sarah's name associated with James and feeling all those old wounds ripped open. I felt a surge of anger. So instead of dealing with her feelings like an adult, she decided to ruin your reputation, plant cameras in our house, and make our lives miserable. Sarah nodded, her eyes welling with tears. This isn't just about me. She's hurting you too. She's tearing your family apart because she can't let go of the past. The shocking connection between Amy and James explains so much, but it also deepened the betrayal. Amy hadn't just lied and schemed. She'd weaponized her pain against Sarah and, by extension, me. It was time to confront Amy with the truth. But something told me she wouldn't go down without a fight. The weight of the confrontation was almost suffocating. After piecing everything together about James and Amy's unresolved history, I knew I had to lay it all out on the table. When I arrived at Amy's apartment, my heart pounded in my chest. I didn't want to fight. I wanted clarity. But with Amy, clarity was always a fight. She opened the door, her expression guarded. What now? She asked, already on the defensive. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. It was never about Mom, was it? I said, my voice firm but calm. This whole vendetta against Sarah, it's about James. Her face turned ashen. And for the first time in weeks, Amy looked genuinely taken aback. You don't understand, she finally stammered, her voice unsteady. She's just like him. She manipulates you, just like James manipulated me. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me? I snapped, my voice rising. You've been lying to our family, planting cameras in my house, and trying to destroy Sarah's reputation. All because of some grudge you've been nursing for over a decade. That's not protection. That's sabotage. Amy's defenses crumbled for a moment, but then her expression hardened. You don't know what it's like, she spat. He ruined my life, and now she's waltzing into his world, probably ready to do the same thing to you. She's not James, I said, throwing my hands up. Sarah barely knows him. She didn't even know about your engagement. Do you hear how insane this sounds? Amy crossed her arms, her jaw tight. You're blind. She's using you just like he used me. She's a part of that family, and you're too stupid to see it. Her words stung, but they also solidified something for me. Amy wasn't just angry. She was consumed by her past. The fallout didn't stop there. I told Mom and the rest of the family about the connection between Amy's grudge and Sarah's collaboration with James. The reactions were mixed. Some were shocked, others frustrated, and a few still tried to defend Amy. You have to understand, my aunt said during a family call, Amy went through a lot with James. She's not handling it well, but she's still family. No, I replied firmly. Being family doesn't give her a free pass to destroy someone else's life. Meanwhile, Sarah was struggling to pick up the pieces of her reputation. Clients who had heard Amy's rumors were canceling consultations. One of her biggest referrals, the same one connected to James, had postponed their project indefinitely, citing the optics of the situation. I don't know if I can come back from this, Sarah said one night, her voice heavy with exhaustion. You will, I assured her, though even I wasn't sure. We'll fight this together. Amy's actions weren't just tearing apart our family. They were threatening the life Sarah and I had built together. But one thing was clear. I couldn't let her keep getting away with it. The more we dug into Amy's behavior, the more insidious it became. Sarah's friend from her practice wasn't the only one who had noticed something off. A few clients reached out directly, asking for clarification after receiving anonymous tips warning them about Sarah's care. One particularly upset client sent Sarah a forwarded email. It was anonymous but unmistakably from Amy. The language was eerily familiar. You may want to reconsider who you trust with your health. Certain professionals have a history of negligence, and I'd hate for you or your family to suffer because of it. This is disgusting, Sarah said, clutching her phone. Her voice was trembling with anger and fear. She's not just trying to hurt me. She's trying to destroy me. Our lawyer assured us that we had a strong case for defamation and harassment. The emails, combined with the hidden cameras and group chat, painted a clear picture of Amy's intent to harm Sarah's career and reputation. But building a legal case wasn't enough to repair the damage Amy had already done. Several of Sarah's most important clients had canceled their contracts, citing the ongoing family drama. A lucrative collaboration with James's company, which could have been a game-changer for Sarah's practice, was put on hold indefinitely. James himself is still on board, Sarah told me after a tense phone call with his company. But his team is worried about the PR nightmare if Amy keeps spreading rumors. The irony wasn't lost on me. Amy's hatred of James had become so consuming that she was willing to sabotage Sarah over a decade-old grudge. Yet her actions were now inadvertently affecting James too. The family, meanwhile, was fracturing under the strain of the truth. I called a family meeting to lay out everything we'd discovered. The emails, the hidden cameras, the lies about Sarah's care, and Amy's fabricated lab tests. Some relatives, like Aunt Susan, were appalled. This goes beyond being overprotective, she said, shaking her head. Amy's behavior is vindictive. It's not about Mom at all, but others clung to their misguided loyalty. Amy's been through a lot, one cousin argued. Maybe she went too far, but her heart was in the right place. Can't you just sit down and talk it out? Talk it out? I snapped, my patience finally wearing thin. She planted cameras in my house, spread lies about Sarah, and tried to ruin her career. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a targeted attack. When I revealed the connection to James and Amy's unresolved anger, the room went silent. Even some of Amy's staunchest defenders couldn't deny how deeply personal and calculated her actions had been. Still, Amy refused to take accountability. In a group call a few days later, she doubled down on her accusations. I was trying to protect Mom, she said, her voice shaking with barely concealed fury. If Sarah's life is falling apart, it's her own fault. She should have stayed out of my business. I ended the call. There was no reasoning with her. Amy wasn't just unwilling to apologize. She was escalating her attacks. Sarah and I braced ourselves for what was coming next. It was clear Amy wasn't done, but neither were we. Amy's arrival at our family dinner was a storm we didn't see coming. It had been weeks since I confronted her about the cameras and false accusations, and I assumed she'd taken the silence as a sign to back off. I was wrong. The doorbell rang just as Sarah was setting the table. When I opened the door, Amy was there, clutching her purse tightly, her face red and tear-streaked. "I need to talk to Mom," she said, pushing past me without waiting for an invitation. "Amy, this isn't the time," I said firmly, following her into the living room. Mom, seated on the couch with a blanket draped over her legs, looked up in surprise. She'd been enjoying a quiet evening, flipping through an old photo album. "Amy, what are you doing here?" "She needs to hear the truth," Amy said, her voice trembling. She turned to Mom, her eyes wild. "You've been lied to, manipulated. Sarah isn't who you think she is." Mom's expression shifted from confusion to frustration. "Amy, I'm tired of this," she said weakly. "I've told you before, Sarah has been nothing but kind to me. You're the one causing all this stress." "No, Mom, you don't see it," Amy shouted, her voice cracking. "She's trying to push me out, to take my place. I'm your daughter, not her." Her words hung in the air, heavy with desperation. For the first time, I saw the depth of her insecurity. Amy wasn't just jealous of Sarah's care for Mom. She felt like she was losing her role in the family, the position she'd clung to for years as the protector and problem solver. "She's not trying to take your place," I said, stepping between her and Mom. "You're doing this to yourself, Amy. You can't keep blaming Sarah for your own issues." Amy's face twisted with anger. "You don't understand," she said, pointing at me. "She's turned you against me, against your own blood." I couldn't take it anymore. "This isn't about Sarah," I said, my voice rising. "This is about you and your refusal to let go of the past. You've sabotaged her career, lied to the family, and violated our trust. You're the one tearing this family apart, not her." Mom nodded weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Amy, I love you, but this has to stop. You've done enough damage." Amy's shoulders sagged for a moment, but then her face hardened again. "Fine," she spat, grabbing her purse. "But don't come crying to me when she turns on you too." As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, the silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Mom, who was wiping away tears, and then at Sarah, who stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide and glassy. "Are you okay?" I asked Sarah, walking over to her. She nodded, but her voice was shaky. "I'm just tired, Alex. I don't know how much more of this I can take." I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tightly. "This is it," I promised. "She's not coming back into our lives until she can take responsibility. We're done letting her hurt us." As much as it pained me to cut ties with Amy, I knew it was the right decision. She wasn't just a danger to Sarah. She was a danger to our entire family. It was time to move forward, even if it meant leaving her behind. The weeks after Amy's departure felt like a slow exhale, as though the storm that had hung over our lives for months was finally clearing. Sarah focused on rebuilding her career, throwing herself into the nutrition program with James's company. Despite the emotional toll, her resilience was awe-inspiring. Slowly but surely, her reputation began to recover. Meanwhile, the legal battle with Amy reached its climax. Our lawyer had gathered overwhelming evidence: the social media posts, the fabricated test results, and the hidden cameras she planted in our home. Amy's rants online, particularly the edited photos implying an affair between Sarah and James, only strengthened our case. The defamation hearing was an emotional ordeal. Amy represented herself, a decision that quickly unraveled as she spiraled into baseless accusations. "They're all against me," she declared at one point, her voice shaking with anger. "I was protecting my family, and this is how I'm repaid." The judge, unimpressed, asked for proof to back her claims. Amy had none. The court ruled in Sarah's favor, awarding significant damages to cover her lost income and legal fees. It wasn't about the money for Sarah. It was about clearing her name and moving forward. The fallout from Amy's actions continued to ripple through the family. The hospital's investigation into her behavior concluded with devastating consequences for her career. Her unauthorized access to medical records, coupled with her fabricated test results, violated numerous ethical and legal boundaries. She was fired and reported to the state nursing board, effectively ending her career as a nurse. Amy's job loss marked the beginning of her unraveling. She flooded social media with erratic posts, blaming Sarah and me for ruining her life. The posts became increasingly incoherent, filled with accusations and conspiracies. Her ex-husband, already alarmed by her behavior, filed for full custody of their children. The court granted it without hesitation. With no job, no custody, and no allies left, Amy left town. She moved in with a distant cousin in another state, cutting off contact with most of the family. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness for the sister I once idolized. As life settled back into a new normal, Mom made a decision that surprised us all. She chose to move into a senior living facility. "I don't want to be a burden," she said one afternoon as we sat together. "And maybe some space will help everyone heal." It was hard to see her go, but I understood. The facility was perfect for her needs, with staff trained to manage her dietary restrictions and a community of people her age. Mom seemed lighter, freer, as she adjusted to her new environment. Sarah and I visited often, bringing her meals and updates about our lives. Sarah's career continued to blossom. The collaboration with James turned into a resounding success, attracting new clients and partnerships. Despite everything Amy had tried to do, Sarah remained unshaken in her commitment to her work and our family. One evening, as Sarah and I sat on the back porch, watching the sky turn shades of gold and crimson, I asked her the question that had been weighing on my mind. "Do you think she'll ever change?" Sarah took a sip of her tea, her gaze thoughtful. "Maybe," she said after a long pause. "But even if she doesn't, it's not on us to fix her." Her words rang true. Amy's issues ran deep, rooted in pain and jealousy that only she could confront. As much as I wish things could go back to the way they were, I had to accept that some wounds wouldn't heal. As autumn deepened and the air turned crisp, I found myself reflecting on everything we had endured. The betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak, it had all taken a toll. But it also taught me an invaluable lesson. Family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty, trust, and the people who stand by you no matter what. For the first time in a long while, the chaos was behind us. The future felt bright, filled with the promise of peace and new beginnings. And as I held Sarah's hand, watching the leaves drift lazily to the ground, I knew we were exactly where we were meant to be.